page 265, the Kitzer. The Kitzer is a little Kabbalistic. We're going to read it quickly. I'm going to read it actually in English today. 264 in the English, or 265 in the Hebrew. The Sfira of Malchus emanates as a root and a single point. I mentioned that yesterday. Rosh Hashanah is the construction of Malchus. We coronate God as a king, as we said. That is, it receives from the higher 9 spheres. The root of the flow is from Keser Malchus and Rosh Hashanah. It's still concealed. So what we do on Rosh Hashanah is we build kingship. We build God as a king, as a melech. But we do so in a manner in which it's Rosh Hashanah, Ba'keser L'Yom Chagenu. It's concealed. The moon is barely seen on Rosh Hashanah. It's the first of the month, right? Only tonight, we make Kiddush Levana because it's 7-8 days into the month, and we see the moon. And you see enough of the moon to make a bracha. But on the first, it's concealed. It's Ba'keser. Nevertheless, through our tefillas and shofar blowing, as the Alter Rebbe says in the Igeres HaKodesh 14, we build Malchus. What do you mean we build Malchus? We coronate Hashem as king. And what does that mean? We want him as our king, and he wants us as our subjects, as his subjects. Okay, continue. On Yom Kippur, this is revealed, on Yom Kippur, revealed, on Sukkot it is Makif, Ashmini Atzeres, it's integrated and then elicited through the Malchus of every day. So basically, the Parnasa is determined on Rosh Hashanah. That's the nerve center of the year vis-a-vis the king, who is the head of the nation, and its application in a way that it comes into our bank account and our table with the food on the table is every day. That's how he reconciles the contradictions between the two Gemaras, and he might say more about it later. Let's continue now on page 267, Perek Beis. V'hinei the source of this, which comes from an energy of the kindness within the inner aspect of Atik, called Atik, and being given to Malchus, it's still a general energy. And it's not divided yet into details. And because it's not detailed-oriented, the recipients, called the Mekablim, cannot receive it. It's too overwhelming for them in a general way. You got to break it down. What causes the energy to begin being receivable? It's the 5 gevurais of Atik. So what do we have here, Moshe? We have Chesed de Atik. We said that earlier. And now we're talking about Gevura de Atik. Gevuras are the severities, the 5 disciplinary method points of Atik. Shehem hamechalkim as a chesed lechlokim. And this is interesting, Avi, listen. What do? Gevura takes the chesed energy and compartmentalizes it. Discipline is not a stop order method. Discipline is a give order method, but giving it in a measured way, in the right way, that each recipient can handle it. So one child gets from the parents this, and the other one gets something else. Why? They're both your children. They're all your offspring. They're all your employees, etc. They're all your students. But each one has a different way of behaving and thinking and feeling, etc. So you can't just give one lump sum to everyone the same. It doesn't work. But if you compartmentalize it and you break it down, it makes more sense. That's what he says here. So and who does that? the Gevura aspect of Hashem, not the Chesed. Yaakov, the Chesed is give, Hashpah. Everyone gets. No discerning. You're all the best. Gevura says, wait a minute. You really wanted to make a difference in a person's life? Let's detail it. Let's fine-tune it. That's Gevura. In this discussion, that's the aspect of Gevura on Chesed. Continuing inside. And the Rebbe says, that Rashab says, this is the way, Yoni, the primary mode of Chesed will be sustained and fulfilled. In other words, why are you disciplining me? Just leave me alone. Let me decide. The Rebbe Rashab says, because you'll have nothing at the end from this Chesed. It'll be a temporary fleeing moment, and the next day or the next week, gone, goodbye. You have nothing from it. You want it to be meaningful and impactful and everlasting? Then Gevura needs to compartmentalize it and take it apart and give what's good for you and leave what's not for you at this point. Next paragraph is regarding the matter of an abundance, very strong rains that descend very powerfully. Tipim. What do we see? Drops are divided as the rain comes down. It's rain. It's chesed. It's coming into the world. But nevertheless, the way it's received here is tipin here and tipin there. This is the ultimate purpose of kindness, of chesed. It says, specifically through the manner of Gevura on the rain, will the land be satiated and sprout forth vegetation. So just as this is true regarding rain and produce, so too regarding the nefesh. So also regarding the development of our talents and our koiches. Listen to this fascinating insight of the Rashab. The koil, the voice that comes from the heart's breath. Hu koil poshut. It's one simple voice. Umischalik, when it comes out, it's divided into 5 different gutturals of the mouth. Acha, aleph, ches, hey, ayin, we call the acha, mehagoron. That comes from the throat. Gichik, gimel yud chof kuf, mehachek. This comes from the palate. Vahain, etc. Vahainu ayidei hey gevuris mansapach, through the 5 severities of mem, nun, tzadik, pei, and final chof, mekoir hadibur, which is the source of speech. Mansapach. Please, let's look at note 332 and read this together so it'll be clearer. Note 332 on 266. The letters are rooted in the 5 terminal letters Mansapach, since they represent the 5 severities. That is, the 5 restraining forces that divide and separate the breath and voice in the 5 organs of speech, thus enabling the 72 letters to be formed. When any of these 5 letters terminate a word, they are shaped slightly differently. These are known as final letters. Example, when the letter chaf appears at the end of the word, it is written with a final chaf. No other letters may follow them. Since this is an act of limitation, it is an expression of Gevura. It stops it. Final chaf, Yoni, means stop here. you'll never find a letter after a final chaf. Because Yaakov, Gevura, is the Mansapach, which includes the chaf, the final chaf, is an act of Gevura, limitation. You can't go further. There's no letter afterwards. So, what we're learning here is that you have the koil poshut, you have the voice inside, yes? From the koil poshut, you would think that the koil poshut, the simple sound within in yourself, has the ability to express itself totally, freely, unlimited. Wrong. Because the Gevura limits it for the betterment of speech, clarity of speech. We know when people start rambling on, we look at them strangely, and they are not coherent. Words need breaks, divisions, limitations. That's Gevura. Let's continue inside.
I mean, is that, Rebbe, you think that when we were learning this farm from the Hasidim Mubarak, also from the stuff that we learned from the Rayats, when he was talking about Tzimtzum, is this kind of the same idea of Tzimtzum?
Yes, yes, very good, excellent, yes it is. But this is in the aspect of Dibur in the Nefesh, but it's yes, Gevura is a Tzimtzum act, correct, very good. And maybe
what page are we on? I'm sorry, I lost it.
Page 267, the last paragraph, the middle of the paragraph. Okay, the fourth line in the middle. Ukedisa b'akdomas hazoyar, as it says in the introduction to the Zoyar. Be'inyin kois Yeshua sesa. Lift my cup of salvation. I will pick up my cup of salvation. Which you all know that when you make Havdalah, and we say this pasuk, you're supposed to lift your cup. If you haven't done so until now, please start this Motzei Shabbos. Kois Yeshua's Esa. You don't have to lift it over your head so it will spill over your head. Let's not get carried away. Just lift it a little bit and then put it back down after you say the words. Put it back down to the position it was in when you began Havdalah. And if you want to see how to do it, look at a video of the Rebbe when he makes Havdalah and you'll see it slightly. In Chabad, we didn't, make shows of our religiosity, so you got to pay a lot of attention, but you'll see a slight upward move of the Rebbe's hand when he says Kois Yeshua Sesa. I think. Anyway, that's the way I do it. Let's go further. Kois shel bracha itztrich lemeheve al chomesh etzboyin. Listen to this. The kois shel bracha, you're making a bracha on Havdalah, must be on the 5 fingers. Hello? Right? So people do it like this. In Chabad, we do it like this. We put the cup on the palm, surrounded by the 5 fingers. If you want to know particularly how to do that, look into the Rebbe's Haggadah for Kiddush in the footnotes, and you'll see explanation about that. And maybe today, the English commentaries explain it better, maybe even with a diagram. I'm showing you like this. Right?
Last week, I went shopping for a becher, right? So I didn't know this, that Chabad becher, is this the reason why a Chabad becher cannot have with the regel? Chabad regel has no regel.
It's not an Aveira, Yoini, but the tradition in Chabad is to have a non-regel becher. That is correct. What's the reason? I think the reason is because you want the bottom to be completely flat, like, I don't know how to say it, The regel is already in addition to the other part. Maybe that, but what we're talking about now is whether it's with a regel or without a regel. It should be in the palm of the hand, surrounded by the 5 fingers. Let's continue. In Zohar it says, the 5 fingers surrounding the kois represent the 5 powers of severity, of Gevura. Veheim dafka nikra Yeshuos. Amazing. And we say, Kois Yeshua, a cup of salvation. Well, wait a minute. We're talking about Gevura, limitation. salvation and discipline. So, Moshe, why do we call them Yeshuas? Uka'amru v'inun chamesh ikrin Yeshuas. And as we say, these 5 fingers represent Yeshua's salvation. V'ayin shom b'feidah sh'ramaz. See over there the commentary of Moshe Zucato, acronym being Haramaz. Moshe Zakus, he calls it here Moshe Zakus.
Who was that, Rabbi Dolphin?
He was a Makubal. I don't know what kind of color tie he wore, Hillel, and if he wore a black hat or a green hat, but he was a great Makubal, and he lived, 5 to 700 years ago, something like that. Here he says in the...
Is that the same as Zakuto?
Well, I think it is. I see interesting here. Here he writes in the Rabbi Moshe Zakus. This is interesting. So I don't know if the Rashab wrote that or the one who put the Sefer together. I'll have to look at this. Is interesting because I thought his last name was Zucato, like you did. But anyway, okay. It seems like it's the same man. The question is whether whether you call him Zakus or Zucato. But anyway.
Okay.
Shein Hey, and if you find out anything, if you see anything, let me know, please. Shein Hey Gevuros Hanim Shochos Miyesoid Atik. So let's go back. So you have the 5 fingers representing the 5 powers of Gevura, which are really salvation. It's Yeshuos. And where does this come from? Where does its energy come from? Atik. Now let me explain this. The real power is in the Gevura. The real power is not in Chesed. Anyone can give. Discipline, that's strength. To be successful in discipline, then you're very strong. Then you're really taking the atik, the inner aspect of God. Giving is not yet a symbol, a demonstration of real connection. It's a connection, but it's not real connection, not the deepest connection. The deepest connection is when you can have Gevura, and the Gevura itself is Yeshuos. And that's why we have the 5 fingers around the cup when we say Kosh Yeshuos Es, and we have Kosh Bracha. Fascinating insight. That bracha comes from Gevura. Yes, Hillel.
So would you say that a Gevura is like the completion of something, like the Manspach, the 5 letters that complete a word? So would you say that in order for bracha to rest upon something, it has to be completed? It has to be...
Yes, but it has to be completed, Hillel, in a disciplinary way. Mm-hmm. Someone will say, I'm completing it through a lot of chesed, through showering you with kindness, or in today's psychological terms, with all love. You say, no, tough love is the ultimate of love. Next page, 269. But of course, this has to be, I remember speaking to someone in shul. He had such a harsh attitude, and I said, relax, chill out. Don't be so hard on yourself and on your kids. People have convinced themselves because of what they learned in their youth, and they think they can be 50, 60 years old, and they're on the wrong page, and the result is in their kids and family, and it's a mess. You have to know how to discipline, and that itself is a chush. That's the chush, a talent to know how to discipline, and how the discipline is the ultimate benefit for the recipient. Because it's very easy to say, I'll discipline you and you'll get nothing, or you'll get little, or you'll be punished, as they used to say around here, Arois von Stieb. I'm sure Yoni remembers that saying in the community. Get out of the house. You don't want to keep Shabbos, you want to smoke, you don't want to wear yarmulke, out of the house. Goodbye. Go to the street. Go to your cousin. You're not going to do this here. That's discipline. That's shtus. That's not what we're talking about here. Yes, Hillel.
I had a mentor once, a therapy mentor, who said, when you're counseling couples, how do you know when you're done? and he said, when he says to her, "This coffee is terrible," and they both know he's talking about the coffee. So similarly, I one of the things I emphasize is that the only way you can really discipline children, severely, is when they really know that you're doing it for their best interest at some level.
Right.
And if they don't know that, I think that you have to really question whether you have the reshus or the wisdom to do that.
And how do children and recipients and others know that if if you already established a relationship with them?
Yeah.
I remind you of the story of my congregant who was a doctor in a prominent hospital, and he was a Brooklyn boy, and his colleagues were Brooklyn doctors, and they went to the same high school, Erasmus. Out here we have Erasmus High School, where Barbara Streisand went, and all these knockers, and they all grew up in the 50s, right? And they're out now in California in the 70s. It's the heyday of California. And they're not religious. Okay? Not that they were religious then, but they were more conservative. You know what I'm saying? Maybe even Barbara Streisand's father belonged to an Orthodox shul in Flatbush. She grew up in that shul. I mean, I don't know how much time she went to the shul, but her father was a member of an Orthodox shul. And they come out to California. And then this doctor, this congregant of mine, becomes a Baal Teshuvah, and a real Baal Teshuvah. And they're in the cafeteria, and he has his Coke with his homemade lunch or whatever. And next to him are all his buddies, and they're eating Rahman Litzlan, not just treif, but shrimp and all the narishkeit. So he wants to blast them. He says, "I know you're not religious, I understand, but shrimp? You're from Brooklyn. You know that we don't eat shrimp, So he comes to the rabbi and he says to me, "Do you give me permission to give it to them?" And I say, "No." And then I say, and he says, "Why not, Rabbi?" I says, "Because I have a question. I'll answer your question with a question. When is the last time you played golf with them? When is the last time you went out to bowl with them or went for a walk?" And he says, "Never. All I meet him is we rub shoulders passing patients in the hallways, in the corridor, in the hospital." So I said, "Then you're not really their friend. It's all just external, superficial." And when we talk about the Torah's obligation to rebuke, because he cited that obligation, when you see a Jew doing something wrong, you should rebuke them. You have an obligation. So I said, the Alter Rebbe already answers the question in chapter 32 in Tanya. It says, Amisecha, im she'itcha b'Torah mitzvahs. Someone who is with you in Torah mitzvahs, you and him have no connection in Torah mitzvahs because you never discussed it. Because you're always angry at them for eating shrimp. So you smile, it's all external, superficial, and then you walk away, you say, "What jerks? They've gone so far," right? I said, instead of saying, "We're friends, let's go out, let's mesh, and then slowly let's talk about God, religion. What does it mean to be a Jew in California coming from New York?" Why do I say that? Because he's talking about discipline. Discipline requires a background, a history. Then you're in the realm of discipline, and then it's not discipline. Then it's two good friends talking about something important in life, and you can develop, you can grow, And it's the same with spouses, and the same with children, the same with employees. It's all about the relationship. And the Alter Rebbe in chapter 32 in Tanya, at the end, in the middle, when he mentions what I mentioned before about the rebuke issue, that's his message. Develop a relationship. And of course, when you develop a relationship, part of that is, where am I at spiritually? Ayeka, what's going on? Let's continue inside. Top of 269. And that's why the five gevuros, the five elements of discipline are represented by the five fingers. Take the hand. Before it's divided into five fingers, the power of the fingers, pre-fingers, is all included in one power. And when the power of the fingers are then, they come out and divide into five fingers, you see, you only use the word tzimtzum. The koach now is divided, limited to each finger. The pinky has one amount of koach, and the index finger has another amount of koach. V'zeu zeres, v'zeh kmitza. One is called a zeres, right? You know, that was used in the Talmud for taking the zeres. Zeres was used for a measurement, and then there was another finger, the kmitza. I think the pinky was used to gather the flour regarding the carbon mincha. It used to be Gemara. It brings the Gemara. The whole chada v'chada lemilsei avida. Each finger had its job. And this division, excuse me, of the five koiches is gvuras. He repeats the point. These five powers of discipline are the ultimate truth of chesed. If the hand yoni would not have avi, five fingers, it wouldn't be able to do activity if you're missing chas v'sholem some fingers. Or if you wouldn't be able to write properly. All these activities are possible through all the fingers the nimtza. Therefore, although the overall power of the hand is in the hand as one entity, nevertheless, if not for the five gevuros as represented in the division of the five fingers, you wouldn't be able to have the activity that's in the hand. You can have the greatest activity in the hand, in the koach. Yes, Hillel.
It's cute how he says "im lo al yedei."
Right. In yeah.
You know, the idiom in Hebrew, al yedei mashu, really, this is the truth of al yedei.
Right, exactly. V'im kein, well said. V'im kein, if so, hadei hei gevuri seilu, shleimus pu'ulos hachesed. These five gevuras, Moshe, are the shleimut, are the completion, are the wholesomeness of chesed. As we said earlier in the example of rain, Yoni, a lot of rain. How do we benefit from the rain? When the rain comes, tippin. That's why we call these gevuras salvations, kois, Yeshuos, Esa. I will lift up a cup of salvation. So all of a sudden we're calling the gevuros, the division, the salvation. And he repeats, that is why the koishel bracha needs to be specifically on the five fingers. Surely, speaking now on Kabbalistic levels, we talk about it in the level of Atik. The five powers of severity are together with the five powers of Sodom, the Holes smaller Bahai Tatika, because in Atik, in the inner aspect of Keser, there is no left. There is no negativity. If you want to sweeten, the sweetening the transformation of all negativity here below is associated with the 5 powers of Gevura of Atik. That's a concept in Kabbalah, and it also has a practical application. How do you accomplish that from divisiveness, from division of 5, you make a transformation experience where you have now not 5 divisive powers, but you have 5 holy powers and good powers? That's through coming from a place where to begin with there's no negativity, which we call this Atik. And to quote again the Zohar, less smala, there is no small, there's no leftists. Bahayatika in Atik. You know why there are leftists in Israel? Because we're not experiencing Atik. If we would experience Atik, there would be no leftists anymore. So this is the new slogan that we have to coin, and maybe it came out of our kollel, and maybe it'll be one day a bestseller. Less smaller Bahayatika. Yes.
That actually seems to be an evolution of what's happening politically in Israel, because the government falling, and the real question about the next government is which version of the coalition on the right will.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. Let's continue. There's a concept. Listen to this, Avi. Ein hadinin nimtokim. Judgment is not sweet unless you go back to its root. Discipline is not bad because your father loves you. But he's disciplining me. But really, the father loves you. That's the shoresh. The din, the discipline, is only an outer manifestation. Ein adinin nimtokin, Moshe. Judgment is not sweetened, ela b'sharshan, only from the perspective of the root, the core. And if you look at that, you know, my father loves me. What's the question? But he told me don't do this and do this, and it's the same old thing. What do you have issues with your parents? Go back to the shorish. He gave birth to you. He did his best. He went through a Holocaust, God forbid, or a war, or trauma, or poverty. Give him some slack. You're growing up as a very well-fed, etc. Okay, that was a slip of the tongue. I'm sorry. So, like, what are you arrogant? You blame your parents. Blame yourself. It's Gevura. Go back to the shoresh. Go back to the source. And this isn't easy, but it's true. When you take the time to go back to the Shoshin, and by the way, it doesn't mean to say that you're not allowed to be different than your parents. You are. If you are, you are. And what do Chazal say? That the children are better than the parents, but the types that's brought in Chassidus, this is Chazal saying this. Yofa koach haben, the son is better. Me is a conjunction, an mem. Me koach av. Not then the father, but because of the father. Because he comes from the father. So he takes the essence of the father, which is pure and good. So the father comes out also with certain limitations. But if you go to the mikoachav, the inner aspect of the father, that's the best. And you're displaying it because now you were zeicha to understand this and to live it. So at the end of the day, why are you better than your father? And why are you thinking, oh, my father is bad this way, that way, and I'm great? It's me, Koyachoav. You got the essence of the father. So with what are you bragging? And why are you angry at your father? If at the end of the day, he gave it to you. But how did he give it to me? I came to it through university, through yeshiva, through this, through that. Fool, you come from that father. That means that you're connected in essence to that father. So you took the purity of the father. Be thankful to him that he gave you an opportunity. Let's continue. Nevertheless, they're called 5 powers of severity, of discipline, because through them there comes the completion of the 5 elements of chesed, top of next page 271. The chesed should be received well by the creatures. And through the gvuros, every individual creature and creation gets from the hashpah. So now it goes back to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. When there is chesed being given into the world, they come for the 5 levels of chesed, of the inner aspect called aspect. It's an overall, a general hashpah for the general world. He goes back to what we learned yesterday. The 5 aspects of Gevura that is drawn into the world at the time of Ne'ilah, it's the aspect of chesed being given to the individual. How much of the chesed should be given to you and to me and to everyone? And at the same time, it's at Nila. You know why Nila? Nila is lockdown time. Very funny. Lockdown time, right?
The Seger of...
The Seger. It's the lockdown time of the light, of the energy. And it's positive. What do you mean? Lockdown, you get this amount, and that's good for you. And your friend standing next to you and with his talis and davening and crying gets a different amount. He has a different Seger. So that's why we call, the question was earlier, why the Chosen? Why is the Chosen the conclusion? Ne'ilah accomplished the Hey Gevuros. The Rebbe says, because at the end, everything is in the end. Now let's see, it's the bottom line. Now we're going to test how much Gevura is given to me and to you. And that's at the time of Ne'ilah. So the how much Shefa. And the lockdown, the Seger, makes it possible not too much to be given, because then there'll be only an overflow. Burnout, and a third time burnout. It's too much for me. It's too heavy. Leave me alone. Stop pressuring me. That's when you have too much Shefa. Comes along Ne'ilah and Gevura and says, lockdown, Seger, you're going to get this amount, and that's good for you. For you. And the guy next to you, it's a different amount. That's the way the Chosem, the conclusion, the Ne'ilah, accomplishes a good result. Let's continue. This also means there shouldn't be an overflow. You know where, Yoni? To the Chitzonim, to the extraneous forces that eat you up and take you and schlep you into bad places. The Klippus. By everyone having 5 Gevuros, the Chesed is now drawn into the world and given to the person in a limited way. The Klippos will not have their nourishment. The Dafka Kosher bleak wool. When do they nourish? When the energy is limitless, is infinite. Then the energy extends itself all over. And it could be that it goes to a place where it's not beneficial and good. But when it's locked down and it's limited, it goes to you, and it's the amount for you, and it doesn't overflow in a place that's not good. This was a fascinating chapter, I feel, and I hope you do, that the Rebbe Rashab explained to us the importance and what really takes place when we have this Kais Yeshua's Esher. And I think we're going to make Havdalah Mitzvah Hashem this Motzei Shabbos. And you're going to lift your cup, Kos Yeshua's Esher, And you think for a moment, it's like it's a hard time to think because everyone is waiting Shabbos to be over. Take a few seconds, Kos Yeshua's Esa, that the Yeshuas come through the discipline, the Gvuros. It's a very powerful thought. Anyway, Rabbi Sai, it's Erev Shabbos, it's Erev Nittel. We transformed the negativity of the Shtus tonight. Those that have the minig not to learn, Chabad is one of them. It's today. Other Hasidim celebrated January 6th. We celebrate.
Will they set up chessboards in 770?
Yeah, and the Rebbe tonight, Rabbi Levi, Oliver Sholem, who would travel to Russia in the 70s and 80s, he would come to the Rebbetzins' house and he would show film from the Hasidim. They would talk to the Rebbe, and then he showed it to the Rebbe too when he came home. And in yeshiva, we stopped learning at Shkia. And then we waited, we davened the Ma'ariv, and many of us went to sleep like 5:30, and we got up 12, and we learned the rest of the night, or Fabrained, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I'm not, in other words, those that, but many, took the opportunity, and it was like once a year, like, you got to sleep at 5:30 or 6, whatever, till 12, and then you were able to spend the rest of the night learning. Yes, Moshe.
Yeah, it's a little trickier this year because of the tzom.
Yeah. Well, the tzom starts in the morning, so.
Yeah, but to stay up all night learning is not so.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying whatever.
I actually have a question about Hanhaga with Aseret B'Teivos and Erev Shabbos.
Yeah.
Do you wash and go to the mikveh as regular?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no restriction. There's no restriction, Hillel, of the 5 things. That's only Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But people, I think they daven Mincha earlier. I think Mincha is davened earlier, right? Because you have to read Kriyas HaTorah. You have to do Kriyas HaTorah, But it's a very powerful thing because Aseret B'Teivos, it says, the Chazal say that since it says the words Be'etzem HaYom Hazeh in the Pasuk in Tanakh about this day of Aseret B'Teivos, if it were able to be, the calendar is not such, if it would have come out on Shabbos, we would have also fasted on Shabbos because it says Etzem HaYom Hazeh, and Etzem HaYom Hazeh is written by Yom Kippur. So you make a Gzeir Shava that just as then but the calendar was set up by Hillel Azakin. Hillel Azakin set up the calendar that it never comes on Shabbos. But it is interesting this year. Erev Shabbos was Hanukkah. Purim's Erev Shabbos, now Aseret B'Teivos Erev Shabbos. So this is an interesting year as far as the Erev Shabbos of days. Yes, Moshe.
Rabbi Dalton, where is that pasuk?
I have to look it up on the computer, but type. I'll do a type and I'll find it. I mean, I don't remember exactly now where. Yeah. Have a good Erev Shabbos, Yoni. Everyone, what?
Last question.
Yeah.
The minhag of Nittel Nach, not to learn Nittel Nach, is that only a Chutz La'aretz? I'll tell you why, because in Eretz Yisrael, we don't know about Xmas. We mamish I'm saying, you just told me now that it's Nittel Nach. I didn't even know. I thought it was already. I didn't realize that tomorrow's December 25th.
Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem, but if, again, Hasidim hold of Nittel Nach, Yaakov was on before. He says that in the literature world, he says they learn, but the Hasidim do hold. The question is whether it's tonight or January 6th, depending on if you're in Poland, in Galicia and all that, or in Russia. But they do hold of it, so it applies to Eretz Yisrael too. Yes, Hillel.
No, I was going to make that point about the Christian. Greek Orthodox or whatever, they have a different calendar, and
right,
and so the night is different. Yeah,
but again, whether it's this night or that night, Hasidim do. What about? Does anyone know? What about Sfardim? Do they hold of Nittel or not?
I don't know.
My impression is, it's interesting that you only brought that up because it's my impression over the years as living here that I would be surprised if they did.
Well, do me a favor. You're in shul,
Look.
Yeah, ask someone that's knowledgeable of a Sfardi, the Sfardi, and ask him. It'd be, I'm sure I can find it online, but it would be interesting if you ask someone who's a living Sfardi, You know, I love that Talmud Chacham over there is in your neighborhood who knows Tanakh on the back of his fingers. I used to listen to his shiurim. You know what I'm talking about? Levi, I mean, he's a regular working man and he's a baki in Tanakh. A Sephardi.
Where?
He davens in the Moroccan shul and then he comes into the Karlbach shul. I saw him with his son sometimes Friday night.
Shlomo.
What's his last name?
He moved.
Who?
Laskila. Shlomo.
No, not him. That's not his last name. I'll have to remind myself. Short guy. He knows Tanakh, and it's just amazing to listen to him speak on Tanakh. It's like...
was his name Eliyahu, perhaps?
What's his last name?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Hadad? Is it Hadad?
No.
That's a good guess.
Yeah. No, I'll have to... I became friendly with him, and he dialogued with me, and we became, we had a respectful relationship. He would daven at to Rabbi Farah's shul, the shul to the left, is the Sephardic shul. So he would come in there, but I think Shabbos he would daven the Moroccan shul. But Friday nights I saw him sometimes at the Karlbach shul, and I asked him. He says he wants his son to see what. He wants his son to see the way the young people are participating. It was interesting, because he's from such a different tradition, and he left his shul for the benefit of his son. All the best. Good night, Shabbos. Take care.